back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. I met this next gentleman, Kevin Jackson, who's the executive director of the Black Sphere, LLC. You can check him out at theblacksphere.net. Author of Amazon best-selling book Sexy Brilliance and Other Political Lies on Amazon or at Barnes & Noble. And the Big Black Lie, syndicated radio show host as well at WGUL 860 in Tampa, Florida. That is with the Salem organization. I'm talking about Kevin Jackson, who joins me here at the Gary Sutton Show. Kevin, last time I talked to you, we were sitting at a hotel down in Washington, D.C., right?
Stop lying. Last time we talked, man, you were burning Confederate flags with me. We were in D.C. at the fair.
You've been one of the outspoken critics of illegal immigration and what it does for black Americans right now, what it doesn't do for black Americans. But, we've had so much that has gone on since you and I talked. I've watched you on TV. I've watched your commentary. And, of course, you're getting your share of critics as well, which means you must be doing something. So I wanted to get you back today. And I wanted to talk with you a little bit about all this illegal immigration talk and what has happened there, first of all. With regard to Donald Trump bringing that to the forefront here, it seems to have got a lot more review right now than when all of us were talking about it back in April.
It is, but, it's still being twisted by the left, Gary. And the fact of the matter is this. It's a silly discussion because what illegal immigration always omits is the legal aspect of immigration. What they say about conservatives is they don't want any immigrants here, and that's a lie. We do want immigrants here. We want them to follow our laws. It's very simple. How can we not explain a concept that everybody understands when it comes to your car, for example? If I just jump in your car and hotwire it and take it, you're not going to go, oh, well, he took the illegal route to my car versus asking me for it. Or your house or your business or whatever. We become this way. Same thing with, I'll use this kid, Michael Brown, that was killed. There were people rationalizing that he went in and stole. Al Sharpton said, well, it wasn't really theft because, what? He walked in, he ganked the dude and said, I'm taking these cigarillos and got himself killed. And he shouldn't have been killed over there. Well, maybe not, but he shouldn't have done that. And there were people rationalizing it the same way they're rationalizing these people coming over here illegally. Hey, look, they just dug a tunnel in Mexico to get out El Guapo, or it was El Chapo, right?
Right.
Guzman. And where are those Mexicans? Because let me tell you what, they used GPS to dig a mile-long tunnel, reinforced with wood beams, put in a rail system where he had a motorcycle to get out. They dug it 1 inch higher than Guzman's height, and they put it right underneath his toilet or his shower. Now, where are those Mexicans? Because those Mexicans can come over here and do some architecture. You know what I'm saying? But the ones that are just walking across the border, they're not those people. They're the ones who are down on their luck. And by the way, we sent $471 million to Mexico in 2013, $417 million. We sent $971 million in 2014, more than doubled. And I'm trying to figure out, why are we continuing to send all this money over there when everybody's coming over here? And then the argument is, well, one guy said to me, because I said we need to charge Mexico when we find illegals. They send those illegals here in the United States send $35 billion back into Mexico. We are propping up their economy in every single way through this illegal process, while many people, the guys who can dig those tunnels, that understand GPS and construction and all that, are waiting legally in line. And not just Mexicans, but every other culture is waiting legally to get here. And the other thing, Gary, I would say is this. America, and this is the way I sell it, America is the Harvard of countries, meaning you got to wait to get here. There's no line to get into North Korea. And there's a reason. Right. It's community college, okay?
You got it.
We're Harvard. And for people to say, well, our system's broken, I would ask you, is Harvard's system broken? Or should everybody go to Harvard? So we never put things in terms that make liberals have to come to grips with something they understand.
One of the things that you have brought out, probably better than anyone I've heard, and you happen to be an American, and you happen to be a guy who happens to be black, so whatever that means, but the American part, very, very important. And you basically talked about illegal immigration and the effects it's had on many in the black community. You live, I believe, in the suburbs of St. Louis, very close to Ferguson, so you're not unaware of what's going on there. In fact, I think you're very acutely aware. But people don't talk about the deal that we have. People say, well, these people want to come here, they want to work, they're hardworking citizens, all that kind of stuff. And then you go, well, wait a second. We got a lot of hardworking people here already who are citizens in the club called the United States of America. Look what the illegal group has done in terms of undercutting the living wages and so forth, and nowhere is that noticed more than in much of the black community in this country.
Well, look, you've just talked to the liberal death spiral. So the first thing they say is we want more. Then they go, oh, it cuts the wages. Then they say, oh, we need a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Right.
Okay, now let's take that to black folks, because I think this is where it gets funny to me. All right, great. Bring in all these illegals, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and you know what you're going to have? You're going to have a bunch of pissed-off black people that are watching Mexicans work for $15 an hour. Illegal Mexicans. And so bring it, because they're going to be cutting off their nose to spite their face. The black people are overwhelmingly unemployed, certainly underemployed in America. We have what's called a hustle. There's hardly a black person, liberal, in the country that doesn't have a job trying to make ends meet, and then they got a little hustle. They do hair on the side, they do nails, they sell their CDs out of the back of a car, or bootlegs or whatever. Somebody's got to hustle, because that's what it takes to get over in this economy if you're black. And the major reason is because the so-called jobs that the illegals only want to take, and that apparently black people don't want, are only for these illegal Mexicans, which, by the way, that is a racist way to view it. Every time you hear a liberal say, the Mexicans come over and take the jobs that Americans don't want, we need them. What that liberal is saying to you is, I don't think Mexicans are smart. When they come over here, I don't care if they're architects, attorneys, or whatever. When they cross that border, they want the jobs that no Americans want. So what they're saying to you is, they want menial work. That's what they're here for. There was a lady in Florida, a Democrat, who said, well, if we don't bring them over, who's going to do our lawns, Gary? You know, that's the kind of mentality that they have, and it's absolutely racist. It's demeaning. It's patronizing. And you know what we do? Nothing. We don't make them pay for these comments. We don't make them pay for the idea that they say to a Mexican, when you come over here, we have a job waiting for you, dishwasher, janitor, bean picker, fruit packer, I don't know what, but you're not going to come over here and be an attorney or an engineer or whatever. They demean that culture, and we don't hold them to a standard, and then they accuse us of being that way.
And you've made the point that I've made. I said, do people that are coming here illegally have the same right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness that we have? And the answer is no. You know, we got rid of slavery many years ago. Looks like we're trying to introduce kind of a very subtle kind of slavery, maybe not so subtle sometimes, with illegal employers employing people like this. And so you keep them down the whole time with a Damocles sword hanging over their head of, we're going to deport you.
Gary? I don't care. If you come into a country illegally, you get what you get. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, like, there's some guys, they're mad because they work for $1 at a detention center, $1 a day at a detention center. I wouldn't even pay you $1 a day, and I'd work you twice as hard. If you come over here illegally, you get what you get. Get in that line that we sanction, that the American people condone, that every country has, and come in the right way. And look, we've all challenged people all the time. Look at Mexico's immigration laws and see what happens. Yeah. See what happens to you if you don't follow them. Look at what they're doing at the southern border, where they're detaining Central Americans and sending them back and doing all kinds of things. But when it comes to letting people into America, man, you should do it. I
was struck last week. We got into that whole sanctuary city talk, and with the idea of this guy who shot the woman in San Francisco. It was interesting when the mayor was asked about they said, well, our sanctuary cities aren't really trying to protect the criminals, they're just protecting the good people. And I thought to myself, wow, how's that working out? 5 times this guy's deported, 7 times he's up there on felony charges, and he's let go by San Francisco, and then he just happens to find a gun somewhere that just happens to go off by accident. And I'm sitting there thinking, what other country, and it goes back to what you said at the beginning, what other country Can you go out and sue a state like Arizona a few years ago with SB 1062, I think it was, who was trying to abide by the U.S. code, and you say, we're suing you because you are profiling people, and yet if you have a sanctuary city in this country, we're not going to do a darn thing about it.
Right. You can kill a beautiful young lady in front of her father, and nothing happens, and all the liberals do is point fingers. Well, it's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault.
Or it's gun control.
Yeah. Or, well, there was a Fed gun. So in this case, you haven't heard them talking about guns
exactly.
because it was a federal gun. And look, it's silly. We have Mexicans suing ICE because in some location they won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit because they said they didn't like the way they were treated by the immigration enforcement people. It's just there's no other country that anything close to this kind of lunacy would be allowed. And Catherine Steinle is the poster child. Yeah. Beautiful woman who did nothing except go for a walk with her father in what should be one of the most beautiful areas in the country, something she's done probably many times, and she gets killed by a system that San Francisco and California condones. And Jerry Brown met with Nieto just recently, and he said, we welcome you. Even on the heels of the death of this woman, he's welcoming them, saying, we will, we don't see this as a Mexican. We have a cooperation between our two, between California and Mexico. I mean, these people should be rooted out, put in jail for this. And in fact, if I were the Steinle family, I would have a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the city of San Francisco. And if I could, between us girls, I'd like it to be billions. I want to shut them down. There's enough of this nonsense.
It has been interesting, and I'm just watching right now on TV a little bit, the president, who normally speaks out on these kind of things, hasn't had a word to say about this, not one. That I've heard.
What's the narrative here?
Yeah.
Every policy that he's enacted got this woman killed. Every policy that he's enacted gets women raped. There was a DUI just recent. I mean, it happens all the time. By the way, any of these stories we're talking about, this isn't like talking about how many black dudes were erroneously killed by cops. There's about 5 of them that Mark Lamont Hill and the race pimps drag out every time I'm on TV debating them. But let me tell you about Mexicans and the killing of Americans. It happens every single day in this country, routinely. The rape of American citizens, every single day. The robbery, the gangs, and all the other stuff. It is not anecdotal. It is in your face. You go in the wrong neighborhood, you can't, and you don't speak Spanish, and you can't get out. Man, you're as dead as disco. So this is not some little anecdotal problem, and that's why Barack Obama has to shut his fat head, is because he has nothing to say. He can't blame the gun because it was stolen from a Fed. It wasn't a legitimate gun. And by the way, while we're on the subject of guns, I'll give you another little tidbit from the chief marketing officer of the conservative movement. You will never see the government talk about statistics when guns are stolen or used erroneously, which is, by the way, the majority of crime. They will never tell you that the small amount of crime that's done by legitimate gun owners pales in comparison to what happens through illegal gun ownership, because it doesn't fit the narrative.
We're talking with Kevin Jackson, Executive Director of the Black Sphere. He's also an author as well, and also a radio show host himself, and not a shy person, as you can probably tell. I like the fact that you tell it like you think it is, and that's the main thing. This has been the year, and going all the way back to last year, of race, I would say. When you look back at the Trayvon Martin thing, you look at what happened in Ferguson, you look at what happened in New York, you look at what happened in Cleveland, obviously in Baltimore, and now in South Carolina with the killing of 9 people there, and, of course, the Confederate flag issue. When you look at this whole thing of race in the country right now, what if you could take all that and boil it all together into one, I'll say, moral of the story, for lack of a better term, Kevin, what do you come up with right now? Where do we stand in this country on the debate of race? I didn't know that we were supposed to be so divided, but apparently we're a lot more divided if you listen to some of the people out there who say we really don't understand what's going on with black people in this country.
Right. Well, first of all, it's not the year of race; it's the era of race, and it's been ushered in by one of the most racist, or certainly race-centric, presidents in the history of man. I mean, right now, Barack Obama is saying to people, to neighborhoods, you're going to have to look at your demographics and bring in more people of color. In other words, if you've worked your way up the food chain and you're in a gated community and that community happens to be 2% white or Hispanic or whatever, they're going to put a project by you. Because they're saying you've separated yourself from the masses. You've done too well, and we need black people to see how you live, or Mexicans to see how you live, because they need to understand. We need a more integrated society. As if.
And just to interject, by the way, you're talking about the Supreme Court ruling about 2 weeks ago in Texas, which is going to apply elsewhere in the country. But go ahead.
Yeah, and so essentially what they're saying is that people of color apparently can't live in like it's 1960s and it's unfair housing. It is fair. You know what makes it fair? You go earn a living. If you want to live in a gated community, look, when I was young, growing up, I will never forget this. I was in my early 20s, and I drove by this neighborhood once in Dallas, and it was technically in Plano, and I went, wow. I mean, I looked on both sides. It was gated communities and country club, and I remember driving up that street, my blood pressure dropping, and me going, I'm going to live in this neighborhood one day. 5 years later, I was living in that neighborhood. And I wasn't kept out of that neighborhood because I was black. I was kept out of that neighborhood because I was poor. Yeah. And I went out and earned a living and started making a ton of money. And the first thing I did, I bought a house in that area. And and my neighbor, ironically, was Deion Sanders. So it wasn't like they were keeping black people out. What's keeping black people out of stuff is stupid black people and liberals who enable them, who have stolen creativity. The real race war is just philosophical. There is no race war in America. Even Barack Obama can't create it. If you don't believe me, go. I don't know where you're located, but go in Pennsylvania somewhere. But I don't know whether it's Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. But go to one of the games. Go to the Eagles game or go to the Steelers game, and you know what you're going to find? You're going to find people in that jersey color, and they'll be high-fiving and fist-bumping each other and against the other team's colors, and that's going to be the only color that they care about. So we see all this non-racial stuff, but when the politicians want to get your money, they're going to turn you upside down and shake you because that's how they get it. And they feign this racist society that doesn't exist.
Kevin, we're going to take a quick break. You know how that goes. And we're going to come right back. And I want to ask you about some of the other situations that are going on in the country right now, and particularly the Confederate flag and what happened with that in the past week. That was taken down, obviously, this past Monday. Actually, this past week in South Carolina. How big a deal was that? And is that just another one of the diversions away from some of the real topics that should be talked about in this country? Kevin Jackson with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. He'll be right back on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. We're back here with Kevin Jackson this morning, Executive Director of the Black Sphere. Kevin, you're one of those guys that it's interesting. I've seen a number of your debates on TV, and you're a guy that you go into the room and you dare somebody to go in there and try to be politically correct, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what should happen.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, the idea that there is such a thing as politically correct is, I always say when people say think outside the box, and I'll say to them, what box? And they look at me like, what? And I go, yeah, see, concepts is what I do. And just coming from a background that says it isn't what it seems to be. I don't believe the media. I don't believe the hype. As far as I'm concerned, you have to prove everything you say to me. And it isn't that I don't trust. It's just that it's trust but verify.
Sure.
So when it comes to, this idea around all these different concepts that the liberals try to throw out or whatever, I'm like, I dismiss it. Look, my debate tactic is when a liberal speaks, I don't even listen to him. I disregard. And it's a terrible way to be, quote, in a relationship. You wouldn't want to do that to your wife or to your kids because you do want to listen. Liberals are lying to you. They want you to believe that you not having a gun makes you safer. You know the old saying, why do I carry a gun? Because I can't carry a cop. But they want you to believe you're safer. They want you to believe that the border, that you're safer when we allow an influx of illegal Mexicans, when in fact, think about the tunnel that was built to get rid of El Guapo or El El Chapo, how many of those tunnels do you think are buried between our border and Mexico? If they can do it 1 mile to go get him in less than a year, where do you think they're popping up? I've seen them popping up inside of warehouses, inside of Nogales and various other border cities in the United States. We have a porous border. Could we fix it? Absolutely. There are ways to solve all of these problems, but the politicians don't want to solve them, but they want to give you the illusion that they do. They want to give you the illusion that they care about your safety. I would ask this lady, Catherine Steinle's family, do you feel safe? When you hear sanctuary city, doesn't that sound nice and sweet?
Wonderful.
That there's a sanctuary? Ask Kathleen Steinle's family if they live in a sanctuary.
Well, you have to ask also our president and our executive branch, are you executing the laws that have been passed by the Congress? Are you out there executing the laws, or the ones that you care to execute for your particular ideological friends? And one would have to say, no, they're not executing the laws at all.
Of course they're not. But what's the consequence?
Yeah, there's none.
There's no consequence.
You get reelected.
They're getting reelected. So look, when there's an old saying, sacred cows make the best burgers. When you start going after McConnell, Boehner, Pelosi, Reid, and they lose, and they can't figure out how because they've got the deck stacked against you,
right,
and still you beat them, then you'll get their attention. And we've done a pretty good job. We've got a few true patriots now that are slowly getting infused in the government, but we have to have this mass. I mean, in the next the next elections, amazingly, it's the most serious in the history of the country. And I know we've been saying that the last couple of times with Barack Obama, but it really is this time because we got the Supreme Court, which we thought we had as conservatives, and we don't. So we've got to get that back with a true conservative, and it's got to be somebody that isn't going to be wild, put into the, oh, Barry Gore, they take all my songs, kind of a mentality. It's going to have to be somebody that says, I'm going to stand on principle, represent the people, and we've got to back them up. And here's what I will tell the audience. Don't rely on politicians. On my Facebook page, it says the time for talking to politicians is over. You pick a politician, you tell them, you're our representative, but you're not the boss of us, and we're putting you in there for a reason, and you better do the right things because we're going to change your Congress, we're going to change everything. But the system is stacked in such a way that we're always playing both ends against the middle, and we never win.
Let me ask you a question. If someone's listening, we had a caller call and said, man, you get people angry. I said, well, that's good. I want people to have a reaction. But one of the things that is interesting right now, you see in Donald Trump, and people are coming at Donald Trump from all directions, and Donald Trump does not back down. Now, whether he does in the future remains to be seen. But for the moment, at least, and he's taken some hits on business and so forth, but he doesn't seem to care. He's saying what he wants to say. You're in a parallel situation. You say what you want to say, and if people want to come back and say something, prove it. Prove what you're saying. We're in a time right now where I think the country is angry, but there are a lot of people who are afraid to really say what it is they're angry about because they're afraid of getting shouted down. Isn't that a big problem?
Well, too bad. If as the old saying goes, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. I'm not a coward. Never have been, never will be. And you're going to die one day. But what I won't do is I won't die every day by being forced to say African American or to capitulate to some nonsense liberal ideal. That it just isn't going to happen. And you've got to get a backbone. And the problem we have, and this is the problem we have with politicians in general, is they want to be liked. They are afraid. Barack Obama is a perfect example. Especially his first 2 or 3 years, man, he was just like, I got to be liked. He wanted us to like him. He thinks his ideas are right. So why can't you like this stuff? I want illegal immigration. Why don't you like me? Isn't that what we all need? I mean, is all we, and he'll rationalize it with some silly thing like, we need to give we need to be humanitarian. Well, I guess the $1 billion we give to Mexico isn't enough, and the $35 billion they take out of our economy isn't enough. The 11 million people that we have here now from that country isn't enough. Look, The charity begins at home, and it begins with you and your individual families, and then it goes into your community, and then it goes into your state, and ultimately with your country. Liberals don't want us to love America. There was a thing where a black chick was wiping her butt with the American flag. Black people, and not just blacks, many liberals are burning the American flag, stepping on the American flag. They don't want to have any pride in what this country's done. And there are many reasons, a multitude of reasons to love this country, many more than the things that our government might do from time to time that most of us would probably disagree with.
And Kevin, I'm going to have to hold at that one, but I do want to tell people to make sure that they check your book out there, Race Pimping, the multi-trillion-dollar business of liberalism. I always enjoy having you on, and I feel like I'm out of breath when we get done, but I love it, and I love the straight talk. Keep up the great work, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
Kevin, thank you. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.